Hello, happy Thursday, happy birthday. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life, because every day is your birthday if you choose to celebrate it. We have some people whose real birthday it is today, and we're going to start off by wishing them a happy birthday. So happy birthday to Daniel, Leo, Joe, Kaz, Brooke, Helen, Keith and Keith. There's two Keiths, Keith Haynes, both the same person I think, but just two separate Facebook accounts. There you go. Happy birthday to all of you people for today, and happy birthday to everybody else, because it is the first day of the rest of your life. Let's do the first breathing exercise. That's how we start these videos off every time. What's the one thing you're going to get done today? You know what mine is. It's still not done. Today's the day. I know, today's the day. I know, I can feel it. I've just been talking to my friend Martin Saville this morning. He's been giving me a bit of a kick as well. So that's all good. And my friend Vanya, who I've been chatting to this morning as well. So happy birthday to you, Vanya. Hope your hair looks lovely. Okay, what's the one thing you're going to get done today? 5 through your nose. Hold, hand on heart. This one, hold for 5. No, sorry. Breathe in for 5. Hand on heart. Put your hands up for 5. Blow them out for 5. Wish yourself a happy birthday. There you go. We're there at last. Finally good. Hello viewer, welcome to the live cast. Hope you're well. We are going to talk today about, oh thanks for the heart, I didn't see who it was, but thanks for the heart anyway. I'm going to talk about reprogramming your own brain and your own free will. This is a fascinating topic. This is one of the reasons why I'm so late today, because the video of the day, which is linked in the description below, from a guy called Moran Serf, who is a neuroscientist. Top 10 from him was just utterly fantastic, because it's completely my field. It's stuff I've been researching for years and looking into, and it was fascinating to hear like a proper expert talking about all the things that I normally talk about anyway, and just talking about it from a science perspective. It's fantastic. And he was talking off basically saying that whilst we do have free will, of course, because in any moment we have a choice as to what we're doing, that free will is determined by all our previous experiences. Now, you've talked in the past about how we get depression from looking back at our past and wishing we hadn't messed things up. Remember the cube. And then we get anxiety by dragging those experiences that we've had, the stories that other people have told us, pushing them forward into the future, and then getting anxious about things in the future and getting fearful about things in the future. And that free will then becomes part of that whole process of, I'm going to choose to do this thing, or I'm not going to choose to do this thing, or I'm going to choose this food over this food, based on things that have happened to me in the past, choices I've made in the past, things that people have said to me in the past. For example, if you're a vegan, for example, you will have become a vegan because you've heard stories, you've watched things, you've made decisions in the past. So when somebody then offers you a choice of steak or something not steak, steak or plant-based something, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, you'll go for the plant-based thing, of course you will. So yeah, so that free will is only sort of semi-free will in that respect. And what he was saying is that they have done experiments where people have been given the opportunity to press a button, left button or the right button, left button or right button, and they've gone and they've chosen and gone ding, 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 ding. But of course they've had a brain thing on their head to measure their brain activity while they're doing it. So the precipice, the principle is set up in the first place. So they said, did you have free will about which one you were choosing between left and right? And they go, yes, of course I did. I definitely chose which one I were. And then they zoom back and they show that the scientist behind the scenes was pushing on left and right, and actually using transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, to I'm not sure if that's actually what they used, but that was the question that was asked, and he didn't dispute it, so I assume that is what it was, to influence the brain's decisions to go left or right, and absolutely fascinating to see that thing. And they do, and I did look it up. This is one of the reasons I was late, to look up what is transcranial magnetic stimulation. Is it a real, not a real thing, but how is it used and what's it really used for? And I've heard that it is used to treat people with depression and anxiety where other options have not been successful. And then this suddenly just blew my mind, because I was like, oh my god, this is basically the same thing that I'm doing for people when I'm talking about being a neuro coach, which is I'm now calling myself a neuro coach. I'm helping people to understand what's going on inside their heads, so that they can rewire their own brains and they can choose to think a different way, feel a different way, and be a different person. Because whilst most of our bodies and lives and so forth are built up from genetics and all these things that have happened to us in the past, we have at any point, because of the brain's neuroplasticity, which we didn't realize existed before, we now have the ability to change our brain's makeup over the course of our lifetime. And that is exactly what the brain is designed to do after all, because it is the decision-making part of our bodies that allow us to survive in hostile environments. And the size of our human brains and the ability for us to communicate, see into the future, recognize time, makes us so different from all the other animals in the world who don't really understand time. They kind of just do it through instinct, which is why your dog, even if you go out, for example, if you have a dog at home, and you go out for like 5 minutes and then come back and it's like really excited, it's like you've been away for months. And if you go away for a couple of hours and then come back, it's just as excited, because they have no concept of how long has passed since my owners have gone and now they're back. Yeah, so anyway, that's why we have these brains. It's fantastic. And of course the problem a lot of the time is that we as human beings will defend our choices even if we knew we didn't get to choose them, and this comes into play particularly a lot in psychology, in sales psychology, for example, when people say, "Oh, $6.99 doesn't really affect me," or pricing strategies don't really affect me, but then they do. And even when you're told that this is what's going on, you say $6.99, it's not £7, and you make it feel like it's cheaper because it's $6.99 and it's not £7, and you go, "Oh no, it doesn't really affect me," but then it does, without you even realizing it. When you're not paying attention, it does affect you. And this is actually a fascinating thing, of course. And there are loads of stories where our brains and the things that have happened to our brains has been affected by like physical things that have been going on, by the way, as well. I said by the way, I don't know if I said by the way there. But there were a couple of stories that came up during that video, so well worth watching that. A guy who, for example, had a brain tumor. Well, he didn't know he had a brain tumor, obviously. He just suddenly became a paedophile out of nowhere, for example. And then they went to the doctors and they found a big tumour in his brain. They took the tumour out and he went back to being a normal person without being a paedophile. And it recognised that this tumour was pushing on his decision-making parts of his brain and his kind of choices or something. I'm not sure the full story on that. But then a few weeks or months later, he started becoming a paedophile again, and the wife took him back to the hospital, and turns out that they hadn't taken all the tumour out and some of it had grown back and it was pushing on this part of his brain again, and it was turning him into a paedophile again. And then they took the piece out and he went back to being normal again. And they just proved that the brain was being affected by this thing, and the way he was feeling was being affected by how it's going on here. And another one was there's a monkey, for example, and where they tied the arm behind his backs, and they had a mechanical arm that was recognizing from the brain, so the monkey understood that he could control his hand to go and get the food that was put in front of him, and that was kind of expected. Everybody knew that. But what they didn't expect was that when they untied the arm, the monkey still used the mechanical arm to get the food, because he'd kind of forgotten how to use his real arm over time. And there's a really good example of this in a video called The Backwards Bike, or I've got linked in the description, top of the link in the description, where a guy basically gets a bike where the steering is the wrong way around, and he spends months learning how to ride this bike successfully, because obviously he knows how to do a regular bike, but he can't with this backwards bike where it just turns, you turn the handlebars to the right and the wheel goes to the left. Really hard if you've ever done it. You can see them in the streets in the UK sometimes. And then he went to Holland and tried riding a regular bike, and he'd completely forgotten how to ride a regular bike, and it took him a couple of hours to figure out how to ride this regular bike. And all the regular people, they were going, "What are you doing? Why are you finding this so difficult?" And he tried to explain to them. They said, no, that's ridiculous. You can't possibly have unlearnt your old memories. You're still there. And of course, he did eventually get it back, and he got the hang of it again. And then he could start, after a time, he got better at switching between the two. But then he gave the same backwards bike to his son, who was 5 years old or something or not. This is all in the video. It's well worth watching. And his son managed to do it in a couple of weeks instead of a couple of months, which then just goes to show how malleable and flexible brains are in children versus how fixed we get in adulthood, and how our pathways get really well embedded at the older we get, because we've done the same things over and over and over and over again, and it becomes harder to switch them to different paths. We talked about this before in habits and so forth. And also this is this long-term potentiation thing that my friend from my old school is a professor in. Professor, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but anyway, he did this long-term potentiation thing, and he talks about the calcification of the neurons inside your brain, which fix themselves after time, and they just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And obviously that's like putting a concrete path down in the grass across your garden. And if you want to make people walk a different route instead of across the concrete path. You have to break up the concrete path, you have to grow seeds in there to put barriers up to stop people going on the old path, build a new path, build a new concrete path around a different direction, and then people will go the new way around. And it's an absolutely fascinating thing. And of course we have lots of different ways that we can change the way our brains work. Things like exercise and drugs, and which includes placebos, meditation and exercise, nutrition, stimulation as well, cognitive training, cognitive behavioural training, behavioural therapy, neurofeedback, that's neuropsychology, psychology obviously, education, just teaching people about how their brains work and all that sort of stuff, genetic modification, all these kinds of things that we can do to change the way our brains work. But the interesting thing about all of this is that actually you can do it yourself, which is what I teach people how to do, is to change your own brain. Really interestingly, there's he did a study, and he was talking about the top 5 influences of happiness. So obviously this comes back into my area of expertise of helping people to find freedom from depression and anxiety, and in backwards order, because it's important we look at backwards order. So number 5 at the bottom really was exercise, which obviously can change your brain chemistry, can make you feel good, gives you those endorphins and so forth. Number 4 was volunteering, so helping other people, getting involved in feeling good about other people, helping other people feel good. Spirituality, which is kind of a sense of connection, not necessarily God, but it could be nature, for example, but it's some sort of connection and feeling like you're not alone, basically, which then leads on to number 2, which is social interaction. So even though in spirituality, I'll read that in a second, Tamsin, but thank you very much for the comment. Social interaction, obviously, that's connection with other physical people, which then makes you realise that the spirituality is really just a feeling of connection to something bigger than yourself, something in nature, for example, or something along those lines, some kind of sort of connection to something else. And then, of course, the number 1 thing is sleep. And he did point out very clearly that it wasn't necessarily the length of the sleep, but it's the quality of the sleep and how you wake up, and whether or not you wake up feeling like you've had enough sleep. And that's the sort of number 1 influence over happiness, which is really interesting, really fascinating. But this comes back down to what I teach people as well. So I have a process whereby I help you to rewire your brain, which you do in the evening before you go to sleep, and then you repeat it in the next morning. And the whole point of that is to get your brain to focus on the good stuff, things that have happened, the things that you succeeded in doing, things that have made you smile, things that make you feel good in the world. You do that before you go to bed, and then your brain remembers these things and highlights them. And then while you're sleeping, you've got no conscious restrictions on what your brain is going to act on and so forth, and so it can focus on all those good stuffs and embed those and create those neural pathways, and then the next morning when you wake up, you look at them again, and then it sets you off on a good path the next morning. You have good feelings the next morning. Of course, the danger is that typically as human beings, we have a tendency to look for the bad, and so when we go to bed, we're thinking, oh, all these bad things happened today, oh, I must avoid those in the morning. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're going, oh, I must have all the negative, and you start thinking about all the negative things in the morning. So my process is to stop that happening, rewire it, focus on the good stuff, get your brain over time, because it does take a little bit of time to re-embed all the positivity going forward. So it's just absolutely fascinating, all this stuff, and that is exactly what I teach people. Had a couple of other things I wanted to talk to people about, but I want to make sure I keep this under 15 minutes. I need to demyelinate old pathways before you can restructure. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about with the long-term potentiation. That's the calcification of the neural pathways. That's exactly it. You have to rewire them, recreate new ones. So yeah, Tamsin, perfect, well done. Good, right, that's me done. It's all about how that works, and that is what I do, that is what I teach. This is why I use the cube as a metaphor for the brain, as to how you can restructure that, and also because it has so many built-in parts of it: meditation, learning, practice, repetition, habits, all built into the cube. And then of course you've also got all the things that are written on the cube, which help you with your happiness as well. So if you're interested in learning any of this stuff, drop me a message below. I will be doing a Kickstarter eventually, and to teach all this stuff. And I also have a program already written up as well. So if you want to buy my Create Happy process, which I need to add some videos to, just mention that in the comments below, and I'll get that out to you as soon as it's available. Thanks very much, guys. Send love out into the world. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Thanks very much for your input, Tamsin. Bye for now.